Let's follow up with three members of Parliament on this debate over the call for prompt federal action on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. From the foyer of the Commons this evening, I'm joined by Ontario Liberal MP Kim Rudd. She's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. Shannon Stubbs is an Alberta Conservative MP and her party's critic for natural resources. And Murray Rankin is a BC New Democrat and his party's Deputy House Leader. It's good to see you all. Thanks for making time to speak with me this evening.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you,
Shannon
Peter.
Stubbs, let me start with you if I can. It's an opposition day and your motion the Commons debated today, so let me begin with you. There's an urgency to this motion. You want an action plan by Thursday at noon from the Prime Minister on what he's going to do to get the pipeline construction started and basically shut down any objections or delays from BC. Why have you set that deadline?
Well, because the situation is urgent. There's an interprovincial trade war escalating between Alberta and BC, otherwise long-time good neighbours who have much integration in their economy, and innocent citizens and their small businesses are at risk in the crossfire between those two governments, which has been caused by the lack of action on the part of the Prime Minister and the Liberals to champion their own approval of this project. It's been 440 days since the approval, 6 years since the proponent started work towards this pipeline expansion. It's been declared in the national interest, and the Liberals need to champion their own approval and lay out to Canadians very clearly what the next steps are and how they're going to ensure the pipeline gets built.
Okay, Kim Rudd, what's your government's reaction to the motion from the Conservatives today?
Well, a couple of things, Peter. One is, I think a crisis is being manufactured where there really isn't a crisis. We have approved the pipeline. We stand behind that approval. It'll create thousands and thousands of jobs. It's good for our economy, and we need to get our resources off the coast into alternative markets, so they're not held hostage, if you will, by just one single purchaser. So I think we agree on that. The challenge, of course, is that BC has said that they're going to consult, and within their provinces get to consult and do as they wish. But we must remember, as a federal government, we consulted broadly with hundreds of thousands of people contributing input. So at this point, from the federal government's perspective, Minister Carr, the Prime Minister have clearly said we are behind this pipeline, we support the pipeline, and apparently the opposition is having trouble taking yes for an answer.
Well, why if that's the case, it sounds like you're saying all the consultation that's been required has taken place. Why wait for more consultation in British Columbia?
We're not waiting for more consultation in British Columbia. We have approved the pipeline. We stand by the nationally regulated pipeline. British Columbia can do what they want. They can consult whomever they want, but it has nothing to do with our approval. Our approval will go ahead. The Prime Minister has been very clear that any move by the British Columbia government to restrict the flow of bitumen through the pipeline would be against the national interest.
All right, Mr. Rankin, what's your view on this?
I represent Victoria, British Columbia, Peter, where virtually everyone thinks this is a disaster waiting to happen. We do not accept that somehow the national interest is determined solely in Ottawa. We think we're proud Canadians as well, and we're going to stand up and protect our coastline. The Prime Minister is playing Russian roulette with a product called diluted bitumen, which the Royal Society says in peer-reviewed analysis we don't even know what it does in coastal environment. We're fighting this all the way.
But the Prime Minister and the Natural Resources Minister repeated this, that the pipeline is going to get built. I mean, is there under any circumstances, is there a pipeline that you would support being built by Kinder Morgan along the same route they're talking about that would allow the same volume?
Peter, the Prime Minister, when he was running for office, came to my riding and he said the process would be, quote, redone. They did not do that. He did not keep that promise. People in British Columbia are outraged at this Prime Minister, and we're concerned that he's not following up like he said he would. Indigenous people, chambers of commerce, municipalities, local, just individuals are all saying this is not a project that should have 7 times as many tankers going by some of the most dangerous waters, through some of the most dangerous waters on the planet. It doesn't make sense. Shannon
Stubbs, do you believe the government approved the pipeline now, but seemed to suggest today that they'd be just as happy to see it mothballed by this possible delay, I guess, from British Columbia? Is that what you think is happening here? The government approved it, but now it'd be just as happy to see it die?
Well, I'm just not sure what else could possibly be the explanation. It's been clear from the very beginning, as the BC NDP have always said, they never thought it was in the public interest. They said very clearly, long before they got elected to the government in BC, that they would use all tools available to kill that pipeline. And so that's what they're doing. So the inaction on the part of the Prime Minister and the Liberals to ensure that this pipeline could get built is inexplicable. The Prime Minister, in his first phone call with the new BC Premier, didn't even bring up the Trans Mountain expansion. So, you know what, there's one concerning thing. Condition 5 of the 157 conditions attached to the approval says that if construction does not commence by 2021, then the certificate issued by the NEB to allow for the construction of the pipeline will be cancelled. So that is a real urgency. That might seem like a long way out, but it's already been 6 years since the project started, and construction was supposed to have started 5 months ago. So it's a real risk, leaving in limbo the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Canadians which depend on the energy sector.
Kim Rudd, the Minister of Natural Resources, your minister, said today that all BC's really proposed here, and you've alluded to it, is a consultation with the people of British Columbia, which it has the right to do. At what point
was done federally.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it has the right to do it, but you
Over
seem to
3
be
years.
saying it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem to be saying it's not. You touched on the fact that the federal government has done it as well. At what point does a consultation process become a delaying tactic? How long is the government prepared to wait?
Well, first of all, as we have said, British Columbia has not done anything except that they're going to consult. So as a federal government, we're not going to speculate on what their move might be. Having said that, as the minister has said, we have officials out in British Columbia speaking with the British Columbia government, the Alberta government, trying to find a resolution to this. And I think that's a responsible thing. And I do have to take issue with Murray's comment about not changing the process. If you remember, in January of 2016, we put in the interim principles and added a special ministerial panel to review this project and to increase the participation, particularly with Indigenous communities and communities along the route who didn't feel that they had a voice. So that voice has been heard. There was additional consultation. And I'm going to say it again. We stand by the approval, and we are going to see this pipeline built.
Mr. Rankin, to be clear here, is this? Do you believe this is a legitimate consultation process, or is it a process designed to delay, and hopefully delay long enough to kill the project? And you're okay with that?
I'm okay with the province within its sovereign jurisdiction consulting with its people on a product we don't even know about, which the Royal Society said in a report in 2016 did not, we don't even know if it sinks in a coastal environment, Peter. Can you believe that? And that's what this government is asking British Columbians. They want to get a scientific panel to review what the NEB did not do.
All right. So so let me put this to you then. Is it your thinking that at the end of another consultation process, you could actually, if you were satisfied, you could actually come to support the pipeline? I
mean, it depends, of course, on what that comes up with. But at this point, with that level of uncertainty and with our fragile coastal environment, I think a lot of people believe we need to do more. And I think one of those people is the Premier of British Columbia, who, I remind you, Peter, had a mandate from the people to do exactly what he's doing.
Right.
The product being transported in the pipeline has been in it for years, and on to the point of Indigenous communities in the area, we should be very clear about this as well. 40 Aboriginal groups along the route have endorsed the project and support it wholeheartedly, and 4 out of the 6 First Nations along the coast and the coastal communities directly impacted by the pipeline have equity partnerships in the Trans Mountain expansion and support it completely.
And it also comes down to to Mr. Rankin's point. Yeah, the BC government had a mandate to do this. You can argue the federal government has a mandate to push through projects that it approves, that it believes are in the national interest.
Exactly right.
And I also, I think it's important to mention the $1.5 billion in the Ocean Protections Plan that is allowing us to do this. There is no question, coastal BC communities are very passionate about the beautiful West Coast that we have. We all are as Canadians. But the reality is the NDP seem to be taking a position that as a party they are against this pipeline. We, as a federal government, are clearly in support of this pipeline as it was approved in the national interest. And so I guess,
Why is it in the national interest, Peter, for us to put fish, our economy, our environment, Indigenous communities at risk? Tell me why that's in the national interest.
Well,
we're proud Canadians as well, you know.
Yeah, I guess those are all good arguments to represent your point of view. But I guess people would say that train's left the station. The pipeline's been approved. No, and the pipe.
Not at all.
That is it. That's exactly it. The project has been approved in the national interest. The federal government has jurisdiction. The federal government has made very clear, and the Prime Minister and the Minister have made very clear that this pipeline will be built.
In which case it'll be really easy for the report to all Canadians to make clear how exactly that's going to happen to be issued on Thursday.
I'm not sure you're going to get that. You're going to get that passed through the House of Commons, but it's good of all of you to talk about this ongoing story today, and I know we'll have a chance to talk about it again because I'm not sure how quickly all of this will be settled, but chances are it won't be settled all that quickly. Appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks
so much, Peter.